Hello and welcome to another video. In this one, I'm going to tell you about my stream setup. And I'm going to try and go into all the details about all the different hardware that I have, as well as the choices that I made along the way, and things that made a big difference, and I guess big difference for cost. But anyway, let's jump into it. I'll show you kind of a little bit of a behind the scenes, and then we'll look into each various component of my stream setup. So let's do that. Okay, so I took a photo of my stream room a couple minutes ago. I tried to arrange the windows similar to how I would actually run a stream. However, I didn't take this photo while doing a live stream. But some things that you might notice before we jump into individual parts is I have a lot of different windows open and they're available on very different screens. Now, chat always laughs about me, staring up at the ceiling to look at the top monitor. I actually don't think it's that much to look up, but that when I look up, I'm looking at this screen up here. You'll notice that I have my two programming windows, usually where my two terminals. This is where I look most of the time, and I have chat, which lives over here. I have my Streamlabs notifications, so if I look down and over to the right, I'm looking at my notifications. I have OBS up in the top right corner, so if I'm ever fiddling with settings, I'll be looking over there. I have my stream dashboard. I mostly keep this up so I can see about how many viewers are watching, because maybe I'm a little narcissistic. And I have some copyright-free music that I usually play in the top left corner. I also have iTunes open because I just always run that. This is Firefox. This is the browser that I normally use when I'm not streaming. However, when I'm streaming, I will use Chrome. And the first thing you might notice about this setup is these very bright lights here. And these are actually the first thing that I'm going to talk about that I think made a huge difference in my stream quality. Having good lighting can improve a camera a lot. And these are what are called softboxes. Essentially, they're big kind of rectangular things. You can kind of see the shape of them here, but there's a very bright light inside, and there's a film over the top which dithers the light, so you get kind of a uniform lighting situation. And I have one on both sides so that I get equally lit from both directions. I'm going to have Amazon links for absolutely everything that we look at in the stream today, and those will be in the description below. Well, so I guess not all of them will be Amazon links, but some other things that you might notice from this setup here is I have my microphone on a boom here. I have my audio interface here. We'll talk specifically about the microphone and audio interface later. I have my keyboard. I also have a small keyboard in the middle. I have other videos particularly about this keyboard and the little macro pad that I have put in here. But I have a macro pad that helps me switch between scenes, and that makes navigating stream much easier. And if you're going to stream, I recommend having some amount of macro pad. I decided to solder my own keyboard and do some custom software to run keyboard shortcuts and trigger OBS based on that. But you might opt for an actual macro pad because companies make those for streamers. You'll also notice that I have my camera over here. We'll talk more about the camera setup later. And I have another camera up here which points down at my keyboard. This used to be my forward-facing camera, and I recently swapped that out. Actually, I recently swapped out pretty much all of my equipment, and that's why I'm making this video. But anyway, that's kind of the basics of the setup. Let's jump into each individual component. We'll start with the desk, I believe, first. Yes. So in this photo, you'll see that there are actually two desks. This is my old desk, which I still use occasionally. It's kind of nice over here, and I need to do soldering or I don't know, have an extra workspace or set my laptop down and hook that up or anything like that. It acts as kind of a secondary place that I can do work on. But this is my brand new standing desk, and actually I enjoyed this desk so much. I have another one that I use for work, that I bought another one for stream. And so this is that standing desk. I have it in the 63-inch variety in the espresso. My work desk is a 55 in I thought it was, oh, maybe this is rustic brown. I don't know. One of these two I have for work, and one of them I have for my stream setup. So that's my standing desk. As for the softboxes, these are the ones that I got. There's a bunch of different varieties. I picked one based on kind of a price and review trade-off, and they've worked fairly well. One of the bulbs has burned out, and it was fairly easy to replace, but other than that, it's improved my lighting significantly. And I talked briefly about the keyboard that I had before. This is, you can see it basically just shipped as a PCB and some parts, and I had to solder it together. And there's a lot of different setups that people do for this. Mine is fairly boring. It's just blank keycaps and no real body and LED setup. There is actually a Rev 2 of this, which looks much nicer, but that didn't exist when I set mine up. But yeah, that's my little keyboard. I think next we'll go to audio setup, I think. Yeah. So first I want to talk about my previous microphone. So this is, I recently updated my setup to this microphone, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But prior to that, I had this microphone over here, and this is the Blue Yeti. It is a very good first stream, like just starting out streaming microphone, and I use this for 2.5 years-ish. Any of my older content that you find on my channel will be recorded using this microphone. And the Blue Yeti is a condenser microphone, and we'll talk about a little bit different, the difference between condenser and dynamic, because this is a dynamic microphone. Actually, we'll talk about it now. So I'm not an audio engineer, so disclaimer on all of this. This is mostly what I have gleaned from doing some amount of research and figuring this out myself. A condenser microphone tends to pick up more sound. It can target an entire room or like a broad number of speakers. The Blue Yeti also has several different pickup patterns to record audio in different ways. Although I only ever used one pattern on that, which is the cardioid pattern, which is mostly just forward facing near the microphone. But I also had a lot of problems setting up that microphone because it is a condenser microphone. And I was often working in environments that were either noisy or had echoes or just had a lot of background noise. I mean, even the computer fans would sometimes be picked up. I'll probably do another video specifically about the Blue Yeti because there were a few things that I did to tweak and make that microphone easier to use that made a big difference to my stream quality. I actually don't have too many tweaks for the microphone I have right now, mostly because I've just gotten it. I haven't really been using it all that much, and also it hasn't really needed much to have decent quality. That's the Blue Yeti. That's what I used to stream with. I am now streaming with the Shure SM7B vocal microphone, and I have the additional windscreen on top, so that's why mine looks... I shouldn't have worn a black shirt today. Anyway, that's why mine looks a little bit different than this one here. Do they have any photos? Yeah, so they show you the other windscreen there. Now this was a big step up in quality for me, but it also came at quite a big price in stepping up the quality from that microphone. And it also, for better or worse, had a lot of equipment that I had to invest in as well. So not only did I not, like, this is a USB microphone, it's basically plug and play, you don't really do anything and you suddenly have sound. This is a XLR based microphone, so you have to get special cables, you have to get an interface which converts XLR into USB. You also have to make sure that your interface can what's the word introduce enough gain to actually pick up the audio, because typical XLR microphones don't actually output much audio volume themselves, and so you have to introduce an interface to tighten that up, or a cloud lifter, or any number of different ways to introduce more decibels. But yeah, so I have an audio interface that I need to hook up for that, and I also needed to change some settings in OBS to make this microphone work properly. And I will talk specifically about my OBS settings in a bit, but I want to go through all the hardware first. So SM7B, that's the microphone I'm using. I'm also using the SSL2 Plus audio interface. This was kind of a sort of middle of the road audio interface. I spoke with my friend who's an audio engineer, and this is one of the ones that he recommended. And I have it currently in the 4K mode. There's a special button which changes a few bits of distortion and like cleans the audio in a way. I run it in the 4K mode because I think it sounds a little bit better. I'll actually show you what it sounds like with it off. So this is with it on, and this is with it off. You might not notice a difference. It took me a while to notice it myself, and I really only noticed it when I put on headphones. But anyway, it's back on now, so it doesn't. It might not make much of a difference, but I don't know. I like the sound of it, so I turn it on. And yeah, that's the end of the audio. I wanted to go over the settings that I use in OBS because they might change how you set stuff up later. And for those, I will grab the settings panel. So actually, there's not too many settings. I set up a few filters for my microphone input, and we'll go over those here. And the first is a noise gate. I actually haven't fiddled with this since switching my microphone, so I might actually be adjusting this at some point. But what a noise gate does is it makes it so that if you have, very low background noise, it's not going to end up in your recording at all until your volume goes above a particular threshold. And I believe that's the open threshold. Yeah, so if I go above negative 33 decibels, then it will start introducing that volume. And then if I quiet down to something below negative 39, it will cut off the volume. And this made a big difference on the Blue Yeti because it was picking up all of the sound in my room and had a lot of background noise. I haven't noticed background noise with this because it is a dynamic microphone, and dynamic microphones tend to only pick up a small area directly near the microphone. And like you'll see as I scoot back and talk quietly that the volume pickup is very different. I have to be very, very close to this microphone to pick everything up. And the other I set up is a noise suppression, and I actually did a little bit of testing before stream, and I could not tell the difference with this microphone. I could not tell the difference between the few noise suppression settings that I had. So this is just the one that I had from before. I also experimented with RNN noise, which is new to OBS. This was not available when I was previously recording with the other microphone, but I'm told this is better, so I don't know, I might turn it on. But I couldn't really tell the difference between RNN noise, the negative 30 decibels of noise suppression from the other approach, and not having it on at all. So I didn't really notice much difference there, but in theory, you may experience differences in that. And that's all the settings that I have for audio. I did have additional settings when I was using that microphone, but I don't have any of those on right now. Oh, I guess one other thing that you'll run into, and this is something that tripped me up as well. This microphone is a mono microphone, so it's only going to input in one way. But then this audio interface takes 2 channels of input, and with those 2 channels, it will output stereo. And so if you only input on one channel, you will just end up in the left ear of your viewers, which I went live with that and people are like, well, I can hear you really well out of my left ear, but not at all out of the right ear. And at least in OBS, there's a very easy fix for that. And that is to go to Advanced Audio Properties and check this little mono box. And so what OBS will do here is it will convert your stereo sound, which was just in the left, to it'll match it to mono, which is fairly straightforward. This also shows you a little bit more about my audio setup. So some other things that you'll note here. I occasionally use RTX Voice. I actually don't think I'll use it anymore. What RTX Voice is it's a GPU-based de-noisification sound thing, which was very important with my other microphone because it picked up all the sound everywhere. And it was also important in the old place that I lived because the lawn people would come by and you would hear, the leaf blower, lawnmower, whatever machinery from outside. I actually have a dedicated stream room in this place where I'm far enough away from, noisy outside stuff that it doesn't make too much of a difference. Another thing that you'll note here, I think the only other customization here is I have disabled, I record on track 2 and I stream on track 1, and I've configured that through the OBS settings. I'll show you those in a second. But I turned off desktop audio on channel 2. That way, if I happen to stream something that is not copyright free, most often by accident or through sampling in the copyright free audio that I listen to on stream, it won't end up in my actual YouTube recording. And that way my channel doesn't get claimed, which used to be a problem that would happen quite a lot, where the copyright free audio would sample some copyrighted work, and then because I was playing the copyright free music and Content ID or whatever would notice it, and then I would get a copyright notice on my channel. And I don't want that. So I just decided I'll turn off all desktop audio. But occasionally I do turn this on if there's audio specific things that I want in the video. One example was we recorded captchas a while back, and audio captchas are pretty funny. So I wanted that to be part of the recording as well. The other thing, I guess the only other thing here is I have adjusted the audio levels of the desktop audio, and I had an adjustment on the microphone, but I've actually removed that, so I should be a little bit louder now. And the decibel adjustment here was partially because that microphone picked up volume a lot better and was a lot louder, and this one is a little bit softer, has a little bit more of a dynamic range. But that's that. I guess while I'm talking about the channel output, I will show you my OBS settings. And I'm just going to go through each of the things and talk about the stuff that I know I customized, because I know there's some stuff that I did and didn't. But I'm not, not 100% sure on exactly everything I've changed here. I think for the most part, this first page, I haven't really changed anything here. It's really when you get into the stream and output settings where you've changed stuff. And here I have logged in with Twitch, and there's a direct integration in OBS, so this is super easy. Occasionally I will do bandwidth tests. I haven't really done them with my new internet setup because I have so much more bandwidth that it's not a problem, but you can always check this little box and do a sample stream that only you can see and none of your viewers can see. This can be useful to test any of your setup and make sure that things are working end to end. For output, streaming. I don't know why this is. Oh, it is checked here. It's just really hard to see. The audio track, I do audio track 1. It looks like you can actually change the VOD track. This is new, which is cool. And for streaming, I use a bitrate. This is actually the bitrate that I used to use. I think I'm going to switch to using double that. It doesn't really make too much difference for the content that I stream. I mostly stream programming, which is text on a terminal, and you can go pretty low on bitrate to get away with it. But I have so much more internet bandwidth now that I think I'm going to crank this up to 5,000. And oh, I changed this before stream or before recording. I don't know why it went back. As for recording, this is the audio track that I was talking about before, where I only record on audio track 2. Oh, I know why it's done this. It's because I'm recording now. Got it. But I usually record at, and I'm actually not going to apply these. I'll apply them after. I record at the same rate that I stream at. This is so that this is so that I don't incur more GPU and CPU overhead while recording and streaming. But I'm not 100% sure there. And you can pick which format you want. I currently use the hardware encoder for saving, which I've found performs a little bit better than the software encoder. And for audio, haven't changed anything here. I don't use replay buffers. Again, for audio, this is fairly standard. I don't have any hotkeys for audio. Video, I record at 1080p, and I only record at 30 FPS. And some people might be, well, why not 60 FPS? And it's really just like the content that I'm showing doesn't improve at 30 versus 60 FPS. I'm almost always just recording a terminal and typing text on it. And 60 FPS terminals doesn't really do anything other than double your bandwidth. And it was more of a concern. It was more of a concern with my old internet where I was very, very close to my upload limits. I probably can get away with 60 FPS now, but I don't really see a reason to do that. And hotkeys, I do have a few hotkeys. I set these mostly so that I can record. So F9 is the button that I press when I start just doing a recording for things on YouTube, such as this video. And I have a few other buttons that are very high F numbers that don't actually exist on my keyboard, but are programmable using this keyboard, which allow me to switch scenes. And this is how my macro pad works, is by configuring a few scenes in here. So you see, F15 or F14 through F18 are all configured in here, and those are these 6 buttons on my little macro pad. And then for advanced, I don't think I really do anything here. But yeah, that's basically my OBS settings and how all of that fits together. I think next we'll talk about video. So both this face camera, so this face camera, and we'll also talk about the keyboard camera as well. And so with that, we'll go here. So I am using a mirrorless Sony camera to do my face camera. So it's basically a DSLR slapped on a thing, although it's not actually a DSLR because it's mirrorless. But anyway, it's a picture camera basically. But I specifically picked this camera because it supports video at 1080p 60. Is it 1080p 30? I think it's 1080p 60. Of course, I only record at 1080p 30, so anything above that is great for me. And this camera was also recommended because it can do HDMI out, and it can also record 4K video if I wanted to, but at a lower frame rate. And this is actually exactly the lens that I'm using at the moment, which is a 16 to 50 millimeter. I don't know too much about cameras. All I know is that this is somewhere between that range is about where you would want to do for a camera that's going to be 3 or 4 feet away from you. I also heard great things about this particular camera for its ability to do adaptive zoom. So you can see there's essentially no pausing as I moved closer and further away from the camera. And so it was great on that. Now, some things, and one of these things I actually didn't realize when I set this camera up, one thing that you'll want to set up when you have a camera like this is you'll want to have a battery pass through. And I didn't realize this. I thought, plug camera in, it can just run off the USB power and that'll do fine. And that works, but if you're going to record for more than about 6 or 7 hours, your camera's going to run out of battery, and then you're going to have no camera on stream, which is not great. And I found this out actually while live. Fortunately, they make pass-through batteries for this. This is the one that I purchased. Basically, it's DC adapter to a pretty standard power cable, and then that pretty standard power cable pretends to be a battery. And this camera actually has a little slot specifically for this because Sony was like, oh yeah, this is a common use case, so we're going to make a little slot. So even though this little placeholder battery thing has a wire sticking out of it, there's actually a little slot on the camera that allows this placeholder battery wire to come out of it. So you can plug this in and then not have to worry about running out of battery. And with that camera, so you can see, oops, funny photos on my desktop. With this camera, oh, you can't actually see it in here, but I have a HDMI or mini HDMI, which is what this camera outputs, to HDMI cable that comes out of this camera, and I input it through one of my 2 capture cards on the back of my computer. Now, the reason I have 2 capture cards is occasionally I play Switch games, and I input HDMI through my Switch, or through the capture card from my Switch. And the 2 capture cards I have are both internal. Actually, I have a third one that I don't really use for streaming, but I don't know where it is. But it's a very, very cheap one. And honestly, I've found even the cheap capture cards work fairly well. I will link the one I have in the description, although I think the Amazon link doesn't work anymore because it was a very cheap one, and they cycle through them pretty quickly. Basically, they make a bulk batch of them and then sell them all, and then they change the brand name. Partially, presumably because of quality issues, but if you're just doing some small recording, then that quality is not a big deal. But I have the Elgato HD Pro 60, I think it is, and I have the 4K 60 Pro. I have both of these capture cards. And I actually just use the HD60 for my forward-facing camera because I only really care about 1080p output from that. And for whatever reason, the Elgato website's not loading, but I'll have links in the description for the ones that I purchased. Okay, so that's that part of the video. And we talked about the pass-through battery. I have a tripod. I set that on my desk. You can see the tripod here. Basically, just to get my camera in a very particular situation. I'm also investigating using a mount, a pole mount actually, because I have a monitor mount. That's how the screen is up here. But there's a camera mount that attaches to a pole, and I've actually purchased it. I just haven't set it up yet. So I want to try that out and see whether I can maybe get this into a slightly better position, but it's fairly good right now. And I think all that's left to talk about is the keyboard camera. And my keyboard camera is actually ancient. I have had this camera for 15 years now, I think. I got this like right when it came out, a really, really long time ago. And you can't really buy this new anymore, which is fine. It's not a very good camera. It gets the job done. It has some white balance issues, but for the most part, it's a camera. It's a decent webcam. It gets the job done. There is an updated version of that, which is the C920, and this is, I think, the most popular webcam that people buy. And this, honestly, for a real long time, was good enough for streaming. I felt that my forward-facing camera was decent. I also used to have a document camera that was my old keyboard camera, and that had a lot worse white balance issues. So like, you can still notice like the difference between having my hands on the screen versus not. The other camera would be like oversaturated and then undersaturated if my hands were on the screen, which was unfortunate, but I don't know, it got its job done. And I think that includes all the things that I wanted to talk about specifically for my stream setup. I will probably have another video about my actual computer setup and that stuff, but I think this is all the relevant stream things as well as my OBS configuration. So hopefully you can follow some of what I talked about there, and maybe it'll improve your setup as well. But anyway, hopefully this was useful. If there are additional things you want to know about me, let me know and make videos about them. But I'll see you in the next one.